We're here today with at LA MATHESON High School, and we're speaking about foreign policy here in Canada, especially over Afghanistan. And this discussion is being hosted, of course, by Depictions Media, and it is being moderated by Annie OHANA, civics teacher at LA MATHESON High School in Surrey, BC. So, Annie, you take the floor.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And for people who are watching us online now or later, you might have been expecting a debate or a forum with candidates, but that shifted as of yesterday. And we won't get really into it too much right now. But what I'm really thankful about is that people that wanted to ask questions, citizens with actual lived experience on foreign policy, to include Afghanistan, but we will talk about other issues as well. We decided to move forward, no matter if the candidates had the time to join us or not. So I first, of course, want to begin with an acknowledgement of territory before we even introduce Neil Katzakakis, who helped plan this event through Global Peace Alliance. LA MATHESON Secondary specifically stands on the unceded, ancestral, unsurrendered lands of the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, and QayQayt peoples. It is shared territory, so you might hear Kwantlen at times, Tsawwassen, but in a larger scale, these are Coast Salish territories. So has never really listened. So even in doing something like this today, whether it's a discussion or a debate or whatever, is the idea that we need to act and we need to have the voices heard. So I'm wearing an orange pin, which our schools made to really represent that, you know, the 150,000 children put under the genocidal residential schooling system. And it's a reminder to all of us that we do this work not just for ourselves or not just for a personal reason, but that, you know, justice and our lives are at stake, and that anything we say and do in terms of finding justice for Indigenous peoples is something we need to do daily, constantly, and hold our officials accountable to that. So that's our acknowledgement. We weren't welcomed here, so I'm not going to say thank you to anybody. You know, we forced our way onto these lands, and as settlers, visitors, you know, some folks have been forced into these lands. The reality is that there's a lot of work to do, and it needs to start with us. So with that being said, I raise my hands in terms of doing that work and hopefully continuing forward. Neil, be over to you. Black Indigenous people of color. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good morning, everyone. If you will allow me to speak a little bit about our organization, it's important, especially for the students who watch this session. Like, so today I acknowledge that we gathered here to save people, specifically on our organization to reconciliation and communication. I'd like to thank you all for being here to discuss campus foreign policy, which plays an important role not only internationally but in society. Foreign policy matters to our citizens, many of whom come from different countries, but continue to care and advocate for Canada's role as a peacemaker. Again, my name is Neil Katzakakis. I have the pleasure of being president of the nonprofit registered society Global The organization was founded by a diverse community very. We view the world as one world, one people, one human family. Altogether, our members and social media contacts, we have about 800 followers. We are always trying to meet and discuss local and global events and conflicts. We try to look for practical peace initiatives and solutions, or become active in helping others who are working towards. Welcome. The GPA board and members attend rallies and lend our voice to various social injustices and to the cause of peace. We attend the yearly Murdered and Missing March and the commemoration of the massacre. Peace and social justice can be attained only by peaceful means, such as education, communication, democratic processes, the rule of law, and non-violent protests of wrongs. We engage and support groups such as World Beyond War, Canadian Women for Peace, Canada-wide Peace and Justice Network, and ICAN, to name a few. The end of nuclear weapons and the demilitarization across the world is our priority, as well as our environmental survival. We are at a point in history where we can eradicate poverty, end world hunger, and save our planet. If, that's an if, we move away from the cyclical business of war and the sale of weapons. If only the billions that go into those industries and political maneuvers are diverted, it comes down to a matter of choice. And that's why we're holding this event, so that our candidates and people who will form government will know how voters and how the citizens of this country feel. So today we are here together. We want to talk about our vision of Canada and the world, how we can stop war, hate, and outcome. I'm very excited to host you with LA MATHESON Mustang Social Justice Youth. And like in the past, we'll be visiting schools, making presentations, and so without any further ado, thank you for being part of this discussion on foreign policy.
So we're going to start with everybody introducing themselves. Why are you here? But I want to say that it is the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and we chose that date specifically. And it somewhat saddens me, perhaps, that maybe that was lost on some of the folks that we asked to take part. Not people that I asked to ask questions, but rather those running for office. And you know, the reality of how foreign policy affects each and every day for all of us, especially I think everybody in this room is connected to some sort of, you know, other country, and most Canadians are. So to say that, you know, policy just stops at our border is completely false. And for Canada to call itself a world leader, to be part of the G7, to be involved in things like ISAF, which was the military force in Afghanistan, you cannot say that you have the right to make policy if you're not willing to listen. So this is a message really to the candidates, to the future elected parliament, that you need to listen. And we will send this out. We'll send the original questions, the beautiful questions that were sent forward to me. We will send those forward. And we expect answers, to be quite honest. But I'm excited because you know what? We're going to take center stage. And these amazing people are actually going to give you the directions you need because they live it, they know it, they fight for it, and they represent millions of people globally. So I'm going to start with Imtiaz. We're just going to work our way around. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Imtiaz Puppet. I'm actually a candidate. I think all you want. I'm running in Vancouver, Canada for Jody Wilson-Regal's old position. I hope I follow her footsteps well. She's a great mentor. In recognizing foreign policy, in recognizing that we are unceded, never surrendered territory, that we need to learn more about our own internal foreign policy, because Canada is not a nation; it's a multinational state, and we must recognize that Quebec claims to be a nation, a society distinct, but it's not the only distinct society in Canada. Acadians are distinct, the Haida are distinct, those Salish are distinct, and that we need to do that. And in terms of when we talk about foreign policy, government to government, we need to learn to do government to government within the governments within our own territories and recognizing those nations. I think that's really important. Today is also the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I remember it very vividly, and this shock that today, even 20 years later, Islamophobia is reeling its ugly head in the media today. That we're still saying languages like in the Atlantic, they're saying that that they attacked us because they attacked our way, or they didn't like our way of life. All this blaming, things like that. I remember this vividly 20 years ago, that I was scared to go out because who I am and how I was and around things like that. And even today, I'm feeling the same, seeing what the media is. I am not seeing anybody in the media talk about how Muslims were affected by that this was the rise of Islamophobia, right? And then we had the anti-terror law that came in, not just in the United States, but here too. And the former Green Party leader, Elizabeth May, championed opposition to the anti-terror law, right? Which is still there because it's inherently an Islamophobic law, right? Because it is was used to criminalize Muslims. Lately, they have now included domestic terrorists, white supremacists and things like that. And Jagmeet Singh has said, yes, put the Proud Boys list. But what about the KKK that's out here in the Fraser Valley? Or the soldiers of Wood that attacked me personally? I co-founded the Coalition Against Bigotry, went at many rallies against the KKK. QayQayt was there when we started, when the KKK were leafleting out in Abbotsford. And we had that rally at the Gurudwara, and so on. So, we need to do more in terms of debunking this whole thing of Islamophobia, anti-terror. First of all, the anti-terror law is problematic. And if you're going to name terrorists, then we need to add those two as well. There's no watchdog, all these things that we fought valiantly, but it's been forgotten. So I think that's really important. And what do we do right after 9/11 happened? Is we carpet bombed Afghanistan. There was a documentary in CBC yesterday that there is evidence the US knew that Saudi Arabia was involved. But no, we carpet bombed, killing 250,000 people, more than those who died in New York. And now the Afghans are stranded 20 years later. And what is Canada saying? Oh, we can't bring the Afghan unless they have paper. So what about all these Afghans that are here in Canada who could bring the family over? I'm trying to sponsor my partner for the last 2 years because of COVID. It's been slowed down. Can you imagine the Afghan families trying to bring their family over for family reunification? To this day, it's paper, done by paper. It's not even online. It's an archaic process. The refugee process is archaic. And it's money, right? You need an expensive lawyer or immigration consultant to do that. So can you imagine Afghan families trying to bring their families over? It is very rare. So I think I'm very glad we're having this discussion, and that's my intervention today. And I'm really happy.
Thank you so much. And absolutely, I see you first as a community leader. I see you first while the action leader. So when you said you still wanted to attend, I was happy to invite you in because you stand for more than any one party or platform, and that's really the point, right? We all stand for something. So thank you.
The whole point is raising the issues.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like running the person.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
So you both will work together. So thank you, Annie and Modi, for all. My name is Gurpreet. I'm a director of Radical Defund. I also work with Spice City. I just want to raise one question right in the beginning that might help putting things in context. Today we are commemorating 9/11. And today it was nearly 3,000 people died in that attack. But imagine what happened in November 1984, the first week of November 1984, following the assassination of then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. 3,000 Sikhs were murdered in New Delhi, the capital of India. If 9/11 can be described as a terrorism, why November 1984 should not be described as state terrorism? Because that's what it is. That's what it is. The state sponsored the violence against the Sikhs. But there is a complete silence about it. In Canada, what I've seen that Sikhs continue to commemorate that every year. We have our biggest Sikh lobby group, WSO. They have been raising this issue for the past year. People have been organizing blood donation camps. But until now, there is no such. Despite the fact that the WSO leaders, their progenies, have been part of this government. There's complete silence about it. That's my concern. They still talk about China. They still talk about what is happening with bigger Muslims in fact. They still talk about Taliban. They still talk about Pakistan. But there is rarely a criticism of what is happening in India. And right now, under right-wing Hindu national government, nobody is even bothered. The way Muslims are being killed almost on daily basis, just on the suspicion of carrying beef in their tiffin boxes, it's totally unacceptable. So I'm really bothered that why our candidates or parties are not being. That's one.
I guess my is here, and one of my concerns is of all the parliamentarians that were elected, only one would have said this, despite the fact that our Canadian Air Force pilots called themselves Al Qaeda's air squadron, because they knew what Canadian bombs were going to do, play into terrorism, cause a failed state. And Libya was the richest country in Libya, offering free healthcare, free education. And what have we now created? Like a failed state with warlords, terrorist groups like that. We should not be surprised at any of this. In the leaders' debate this week, there was no mention of NATO and these are offensive military that we're spending tens of billions of dollars, on. We are continuing to say we're going to spend $60-some billion on fighter planes, weapons of mass destruction. 90% of the victims of these planes are civilians. This is only in the interest of military industrial complex. We do this 40 and 50 years ago. How come this is not on the agenda? We should have learned that. But on a more personal note, why I want to be heard is we have a mass extinction event happening right now, and one of the main things that is causing that is our own animal agriculture is taking up more than half the land that's being used to feed animals that we consume. Completely unsustainable. It's one of the main causes. Dozens of countries in the world all for animal agriculture have yet it's not. Why most of our environmental the world scientist is saying we need to cut our animal production for personal health. I'm somebody that's reversed chronic kidney disease, macular degeneration. We're not told this when we go to a fight. So, the weakness in Canada, in Europe, and even in HMOs, private health companies in the States, they're sending for that preventative health management is far better for the patient, far cheaper. What we're doing is not working. Let's buy more fiber planes, buy more things. Yeah, like, the same old has created an unworkable, untenable situation for the planet and for our personal lives. We still want to live healthy, long life. Yeah, that's not. But yeah.
You're really showing the intersectionality of so much of this, right? Thank you so much. So much for I'm founder of scholarship. As well as some is the sports component. Gold stuff we provide. Throughout my experience, without completing that sport play a vital and our third and so what's happening in Afghanistan now is where Taliban are when and they think about here and they're almost lights, not clouds, or and so Afghans are thoughts. The reason that I'm here, it's very personal to me because I said my dujos and our dujos that they were graded by the Taliban 2 days ago. Taliban are very, very discouraged, very, very angry because it's all preventable. We saw this coming. We saw warn people, advocate, everybody tried to get this up. But the world did not. The legal. Yeah, big shame. The reason that I'm here because I want to have answers. What happened? Why happened? Why now that we're in Canada? Why the Canadian foreign policy failed in Afghanistan? This was not something that was beyond their capacity or ability. They were very capable of doing a good job and having a proper exit strategy from Afghanistan, but they didn't care. We Afghans knew the US and the foreign nations are not going to be there forever, but we were expecting a better, smooth exit strategy. The world abandoned Afghanistan. The world abandoned Afghan women and Afghan girls. When USA invaded Afghanistan in 2001, everybody was promised, including my family, a normal life. And we were promised democracy, human rights, but now it's all just a mess. You have seen the pictures from the Kabul airport. Everybody was trying to get on one airport. People were sunburned, fraud, there was horrible. But this was all preventable.
as I mentioned, it is very, very personal. And I'm very angry. And I want to, the Canadian government to take action. Canadian government said that they are accepting and welcoming 20 plus against that. 8,000 people applied for refugees. Only 3,700 were accepted. And that's not even clear. There's no transparency. That's the number that the Canadian government claims that they evacuated. But when they evacuated, we have very credible sources in Afghanistan at the Kabul airport. They said that Canada also asked from other countries, Ukraine and USA, Turkey, Qatar, to help them evacuate Afghans to different countries too. So the number that Canadian government used, the number that the Canadian government actually has is way smaller than that.
You have to split.
Yes. Yeah, there are some women, some mothers at the airport who abandoned their baby from their arms because babies knew a lot of this. Or they messed up the paperwork or something. It happened to one of my relatives as well. The mother just abandoned the child because she wanted to save her life as well. And she left the baby with the rest of their family. So that's the reason that I.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that's a part one call. My name is Anita Lau. I am the co-founder and director of QayQayt. I'm also the director of community development at Growth Support. Both are organizations that and I think I mean I'm like for so I grew up with a lot, right? And I grew up in the system, wasn't taught by daddy. No, it was like Mrs. Smith is colonized, colonized, right? Like I didn't know about that, right? And now it's like, please, I grew up in a small town. We were, and so now for my generation, we program them and to actually start this realistic, and then also right. So right now, I can say, even within my career, there's not many people are actually interested in what happens. Foreign policy is so important, right? I mean, what us within the community, in the last year, capital time spoke that and seen that we, but then that engagement couple times. So that when look they had talked about this then for right? Like that was something that one of my talk about, even though there were people talking about for my generation, right? In Japanese section, only raised here, some people did become right? And what does that look? And anytime you start talking about this stuff, what do you think that's maybe we get labeled Palestinian terrorists, environment, Palestinian terrorists, right? Like all we're doing. So what does that mean for government? This is India, this is my country, our personal, so much of our community because we are seeing that. So when we then start to make these voices, right? Like what that was happening and how we are responsible. We weren't complete. Because 20 years later, we're leaving the worst case scenario because now we've left this population. They're in danger because they I remember feeling like I'm sorry about women who was 4 or 5 years old. So it's not only am I in danger, they're threatening me, right? And I look and I have and you see it and you're like, hey, like my baby is like, still when we're doing this and she's learning about, and I can't go out and get them food, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and yet here, we sit in Canada, and, we're so good, right? We're all about human rights, but we're not just happy. Follow the money. The reason we don't follow the inside is because we can't go up against the government, because you know what? We don't call it Saudi Arabia, how much of American corporation or the company in the US. We need to become more conscious of this. We need to become aware. We need to be more powerful. And I think that's where, because my generation has been like really complete. Like even like we don't have things to do. We don't care unless we have a loved one in there and we see that it's, perfect. So the human rights violations, the thoughts of governments, foreign interference, all these things, and having this accessible conversation and dialogue. So we hear these at a very high level, but we don't know the stories and how it actually impacts us on a daily life because we live a very protected life. And life is good, right? Like if I didn't ever watch the news, I can go on and never be affected, right? Because my family is mostly here, right? They all have like, their third, fourth generation, stable, their biggest thing is like, are you vaccinated? Can you get it? So, bringing these voices, having this conversation, and talking about the story, and holding us Canadians accountable, right? And our government accountable because they represent us. And white supremacy is a huge thing, right? Start bringing those words out, right? This fragility that we have around it, right? It's not white supremacy, but it is an issue. Like those stones and letters and stuff in Oxford that were going out in this whole narrative that this isn't like Canada. No, sorry, when a family who's gone out for a walk in prison Muslim got run over, right? Like how many of us go for walks in the evening? This whole family except for a 10-year-old boy, right? And he wakes up, that they were going for evenings. This is our Canada. And you know what? It's not the colored folks who are the danger. It is this white supremacy. It is our foreign policy, and it is happening. So I think, once again, everybody lived experiences, conversations, bringing those voices to the table. So thank you so much for making it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we weren't going to let anybody stop it from happening at the end of the day, right? Yeah. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to come to this. It's already really riveting hearing from everyone, and I'm thankful to be among all of you. My name is Yasminola. I'm here at human rights activist. I was born in northern Rakhine State, and then I left when I was 3 because of the waves of violence that happened throughout the 90s. And even at that time, Canada did not intervene to help, to raise the situation, to raise the awareness about Rohingya people. We were actually left stranded in Thailand for about 16 years without any protection, without any help from anybody. We had to make it out on our own. It's extremely difficult. Eventually, it was not the Canadian government that helped us to actually resettle here. It was the private citizens. It was actual Christian groups that actually, reached out their hands. So I think they're, in light of the 9/11 and a lot more issues around there's so much more that we've left out in parts of Canadian history or Canadian foreign policy practices around the world where we actually hope not only have we committed crimes as a state, our settler colonial government, and bringing this state into wars, into different areas, destabilizing various different communities, or help enabling the process of destabilizing that community, dispossessing their lands, extracting the resources, and then we turn around and say to the world that, oh, we throw some crumbs and bits, for these different communities to help them with the refugee crisis. We settled about like 25,000 Syrian refugees. We're now going to accept Afghanistan, people from Afghanistan. It's really not enough. You have helped create these problems in the first place. Why are we so sure that we're such a peace-loving, human rights champion nation? We have feminist foreign policy, but we have
barely enacted anything to help not only the people outside that we've created problems for, but also the people here back home, the Indigenous communities, whose, the lived experience have been extremely gendered, from the clean drinking water situation to various other plethora of issues that happen and take place day in and day out. So the question that I have and the reason why I'm here is the perpetuation or the continuation of the cycle of settler colonialism that has created genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity here in Canada against the Indigenous people have also been the practice of foreign policy in other areas around the world. And there is a clear example. Rohingya is one of them, Afghanistan is one of them. Canadian mining companies have created a lot of gendered issues and have actually, violated women in Africa, in other parts of the world. So there is so much of the irony that we are now apparently having the Truth and Reconciliation day of recognition of that. It's all gesture when we do our work. And I hope that whoever will listen, whoever the candidates, that didn't show up today, except for you, thank you for being here. I hope that they're hearing some of this, that they're really not any better off when they're not showing up, not only here, but they're not showing up for the Indigenous people in a meaningful way. They're also not showing up for other people outside of this country where they have helped perpetuate or create or enable the situation of disempowerment. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it is worth pointing out, I mean, as many have stated already, and even before we were recording, the reality of how this is all the same, right? From many different things, right? So not just right now or today or one event, but even larger, that a lot of these conversations are not attempted or brought up or put on.
Hi everyone. My name is Katzie. I've never been in a space before. So thank you for letting me be here and just getting to listen to you all. I'll try to keep it brief because I think there's everything wrong to say. I'm an SFU student in political science. I'm learning from really all of you on how to do better. I guess my only flex, I'm an SFU undergraduate senator. At my school, there's a need for us. There's a need for us to better understand people's differences, people's folks' grievances, what they've been through because they're part of marginalized communities, LGBTQ communities. And unfortunately, my school doesn't. They say they're trying to decolonize their thinking, but I think there's still so much more that they can do. So whatever chance I get to, whether it be in spaces that are internal to SFU or external to SFU like today, I try to take those opportunities to better understand. So hopefully I can be a part of influencing policy that uplifts those marginalized students at my school. Originally, I was just helping out and bring people out to come ask candidates questions, and hopefully get to hear on what they want to do or how they can try to do better. But I was really angry hearing that all these candidates, except for MTS, thank you, they just withdrew, and I feel that they're not wanting to listen because they decided that getting out the vote was more important than actually nurturing and hearing what people need them to do. So really maybe he was just wanting to listen and to learn from all of you, and to also support all of you in showing these candidates, if they get to hear the recording, I think they understand that they should be ashamed that they didn't respond to the call. They promised they did it, and they didn't come. And to me, it's just lip service what they did. So I really hope that whoever gets into government, they're gonna understand that even they cause some harm just by not being here in a small little community gathering, because that's who they serve, not the big capitalist corporations that they rely on. It's us, all of you, not the ones that are perpetuating war and genocide all over the world. So thank you for letting me be here and letting me get to learn a little bit more from all of you.
I think you're referring to this Grad.
Absolutely.
You are the future.
Yeah, well, and you're the leader now. I mean, I remember coming to an event that you helped put together on August 9th, Reflection Day, and speakers from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and that's why I reached out to you to get all these incredible individuals speaking, and it connected the Indigenous experience, all these realities of again, just regular folk, right, and youngsters, which was amazing. And they spoke so fervently, so brilliantly, much like today, as to their issues and why it mattered. So you're already doing the work, I can promise you that, and I can only imagine where to go. And I think it is important to realize that it's not the intent, it's the impact. So the perception, and I then reached out to people to say, oh, things have shifted, right? You know, I'm not going to say there's no legitimate reason for why they couldn't make it, right? Or why they hadn't responded or whatever. There were a lot of people scheduled to come. So whatever, right? I'm not going to judge that, but the perception is very interesting, right? Like the way we perceive it as people who have these issues, and not just issues, that seems like such a simple word, right? Who have these life and death situations that are ongoing, right? It doesn't fit right. The impact is negative. So no matter that wasn't the intention, or oh no, but you know, that's not, I'm sorry, right? That's how it feels like, right? And that's, I'd be remiss, I'll keep it really short. If I didn't bring up, because of the change, some people couldn't make it, but we had a refugee who is queer, a gay man, and he wanted to come today, but he actually ended up being quite sick and couldn't make it. I do want to raise, to me, a very important part was to include the 2S LGBTQ plus experience, not just here in Canada, where we still have a blood ban in terms of people that engage in yeah, you can, perfect, yes. So please, like, why is that important?
No, first of all, thank you. I mean, I just want to respond to what
For sure.
in terms of the lip service to Indigenous issues and reconciliation. I mean, it came up in the debate when the Prime Minister tried to back that were in court against you. I think it's this ridiculous that is still going on. So yeah, I agree with you. This is. I really think everybody's intervention is valuable. And I'm thinking that and I think we're bringing it together, because I think in terms of, you know, we shouldn't just talk about this theory. So I'm hoping inshallah we will carry this discourse and put the pressure on the government who is the partner with the Peace Alliance to have these debates and this issue on a regular basis to challenge whoever gets elected and keep on the pressure. So yeah, in terms of, yeah, I mean, specifically, we're not, that's why I said that, you know, in terms of difficult to respond to my partner, and that's why that, yeah, I think the issue of the blood ban has been a long-term issue for a number of years. I don't know if people know, Yemen cannot donate because of this fear of sexual transmission. That the fact that STDs are only transmitted by gay men. We all know that everybody has sexual intercourse and sexual relationships, and so they're safe, but our blood is somehow not safe. So we're hearing this will change. We don't know, but it's been an
and I wanted to add also that then what are we doing in terms of, because there is still many segments of our societies here on Turtle Island that actively engage in queerphobia and do business with countries that have queerphobic policies and transphobia and criminalize LGBTQ status. And so that's something of concern that I have as well, is that we can't just say, oh, look, we have same-sex marriage. Oh, look, supposedly, you fly a rainbow flag and everything's okay. Very much performative when we see whether it's betrayed, any number of reasons. And I would say even suggesting that somehow BIPOC communities are queerphobic, and we know that's actually white supremacist, that we are raised, like Indigenous communities had very strong understanding of gender spectrums, orientation spectrums. They were leaders of those communities. And part of settler colonial Canada, America, everywhere, every empire you can think of, every colonial nature, was to, kind of undo all of that. And to literally criminalize that idea so that they could replace it with a binary power structure. So that is ongoing, and I know that a lot of people in the queer community want to hear more about that. And it's not enough to say that somehow we're better when we are complicit in some of the policies where close to 70 countries still criminalize that.
I also want to add in terms when we talk about our banks, we don't talk about other bound. There's an issue of, Bachabazi, which is an ongoing thing, and to understand where men, young boys, for entertainment, right? Because they can do that sexually. There's an ongoing thing. I also want to do a shout out to being more like concerning the Center, who is a lawyer who took on the issue of missing women. And last time election, I was actually against him in the center. And I really wanted the fact that, like he said, not missing murdered women, he said, and two-spirit. Because we have to recognize that they're missing boys. And we saw that the missing graves, how young boys are abused. We're seeing missing men in Toronto. That has been an issue as well. And in fact, two-spirit and trans women are very vulnerable, and that doesn't get recognized. I think we need to recognize the fact that in terms of vulnerability, of course, girls and women are vulnerable. But there are others who are vulnerable that are affected in cases like Afghanistan, or even here, right, in terms of missing and so on. And there's not enough support for boys and men who are sexually exposed. There isn't. There is no battery support services for them at all. And so the mental health and the trauma, because I'm a therapeutic counselor, so I know what that's about. And I have experienced sexual violence myself, so I know what that's about as well. So I just want to bring those issues up.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was entirely the point, right, of having different speakers on these issues, and something that I rarely see brought up, right, except for certain people, that didn't get to be brought up before it's on. And I'll just say one more thing, I'll just ask the question really. So part of my lived experience is the reality of what's going on in Pakistan. And so very importantly, and again, like we have someone scheduled, but I'm going to keep it simple and just to say, maybe not everybody knows the history, but we have this colonial history in that region. And it goes far, far back. And realistically today, like what is Canada doing to ensure the human rights and every right of the Palestinian people? Like just short and sweet, right? What is going on? Why isn't more said? There is silence. And I will say, personal experience and other experiences of others, there is a fear to speak out. I am Jewish. I'm a Sephardic Jew. My family is Arabic Jews from Morocco. There is a fear to speak out because you are shouted down. There have been death threats to people. Even in trying to find people for today, can I just send my question and maybe not be present, right? And I mean, like, these are Palestinians, but it's across the board, unfortunately. Many of us that want to talk about this issue feel held back. And it's completely understandable that sometimes you kind of don't know what everybody's thinking, but that's like individual, and I'm like, look, systemically what's going on. Why is it that Canada, every party, does not stand up stronger and can't even say the word Palestine, barely says the word Palestinian? So that is a major issue there. And so I will send that question forward, but it is part of that foreign policy. And whether or not we're part of like a quartet or whatever, the people that are supposedly having negotiations, bottom line is that we are seeing the further and further erasure of Palestinian people. And that absolutely needs to be addressed. We have so many incredible Palestinian leadership from youth and up that I see literally on a daily basis. that they deserve better, right? From Canadian government, from all governments for that matter. And it's okay to criticize. If there was one thing I could say to everybody, it's okay to criticize. We have the right to criticize our governments. And this holds true everywhere and even in Canada, right? You are not Canadian or un-Canadian or anti-Semitic, right? Or Islamophobic for raising questions of what the state is doing to
Yeah, when we're talking about race in Canada, it's a very narrow sort of very narrow. The UN Human Rights Declaration is far broader, guaranteeing the right to the we don't talk about that. If we have 150,000 kids with poverty and disease, and is that the government only has plans to bring that down by 5,000. Like what about the other 100 whatever, right? Like, which group are you going to be in? And does that include lots of refugees? Yeah, but we can't forget the economic aspects when we're talking about human rights. We have to give that fair share of economic life, and whether that's living wage or living income, that's being talked about politically. Like we have to get serious about that. Parties that are talking about it aren't doing it. We have a prime minister that housing is a human right. Well, we don't go on homeless. Right?
Ownership.
We have to make sure these guys get real, right? And human rights have to be get forward money. We can't not forget that because that is what it's all about for these guys who are operating.
And that's perfect. That's exactly why when people go, oh well, what about Canada? Because that's often the thing, right? Why are we talking about this instead of that? Our economic policy is foreign policy. Our foreign policy is economic policy, right? Like, stop telling me it's about the money. It is about the money. In a lot more. Oh yeah, in school, of course, right? But it's fascinating to see that. I mean, we see it in our own students when they say, refugees are homeless people. And at least for me, I'm like, why is that a debate? Why is that even a question? But it's one that I hear about all the time. I'm not blaming them for that. It's a structure, but it's the reality. So thank you. You just did that.
Yeah, you were talking about Palestine. I think the campaign being run by the Palestinians during the election time. It's hashtag I vote Palestine. So they are trying to make all the candidate parties accountable on that particular question, which I think is a very good strategy. Secondly, we started a campaign several years ago, couldn't get much support, but I'm just showing this idea in front of you. You guys can think about it, or you folks can think about it. So basically, what I suggest that there should be an option on the ballot paper, which gives us the right to reject. None of the above. Because these parties and candidates are taking our support for granted all the time. I give you one example. I live in Delta. And for strategic reasons, I voted Liberal yesterday. Because that seat, NDP cannot win. And I don't want that seat to go to Green Conservative. But the problem is, Carla, despite being a minister for disability inclusion, we approached her a number of times to raise voice for GM Delhi University professor, being incarcerated, despite being disabled below the waist. She never uttered a word. We gave her a letter signed by 100 people in her riding to make her job easier. The staff are saying we just want to delay you. Now you are not listening to us. You don't care. Despite that, we are voting wisely because that was right. We got after a long dispute. Our community elders had fought for the right to vote. They were disfranchised in 1940. They got the right to vote in 1940. And I bet if they were alive today, they would have fought for electoral reforms. If we had that option on ballot paper, at least we can send them a message. You know what? every candidate, every party will think that how many people voted none of the above and why. Try to freeze them out. And we are not saying that you do the same all the time. You just keep rejecting the candidates and parties all the time. If you think somebody has done a good job, you still have a choice. But if none has really appealed you, then you have a right to reject. And on Sai Baba's note, even NDP in Delta was not very helpful. I mean, we given this proposal that every year you do a convention. This year, at least recognize Sai Baba as a human rights defender, the way they did with the Sun Singh Kharada. But they never even acknowledged receiving that happening. Leave aside the question of doing what we wanted to do. Even Jagmeet slept off on that issue for a number of months. After so much criticism, he made a brief statement on Twitter. That was the first time in 2017. So what I'm saying that these parties sometimes they take you for granted because they claim to be progressives. They think that because this guy is not going to vote conservatives, what choice do they have? So we need to have that right to reject on the ballot. That's my proposition.
Isn't it fascinating? We have an election that was called that nobody really wanted. That was in the midst of the collapse of Afghanistan and massive human rights. I mean, many other issues, right? But I mean, that was very timely in terms of literally the scenes coming out of Kabul airport. And the fact that we're all dissatisfied and nobody's happy about this, but is electoral reform anywhere there, which was a broken promise. So if you go back,
But
right?
by the way, I still have those buttons and signs with me. None of the above.
Yes.
If somebody wants to restart a campaign, I will be happy to just pass them over because we kept on fighting on this. Never got any support from the community. People were saying that you were asking us to waste the vote. I mean, that was their interpretation.
So the point is, I think that lobbying and pressure works. The fact you got that free from the community is something. That's why I think we need to continue with this. This is why in the election. In terms of proportional representation, the broken promise actually was a lie. Right?
Fair enough.
Because if you look at the record of Justin Trudeau, he was never proportional. This idea of like a performance value. And what happens is this, that's like weighted voting or rank voting. And if you bring that in, the Liberals will always get a majority. It's not proportional. So when he did not get that way in the Electoral Reform Committee, he's trapped. Right? So that's what really happened. Because I remember I was at Ayers Sarai's office. They didn't even consult us. They were never proposed. And that's why the other parties, and even the Conservatives said, no, we're not. I just want also, and with I think in terms of the Palestine issue, the vote for Palestine, so my position is very clear. And I know that the Greens and the NDP have not been very good, but the debate is there. And I think it's good to keep the debate going and look at things as well. But I'm very clear on my position on Palestine, and I got these Zionist lobby, right? Saying, I got this message saying that, I'm ashamed that you've taken this position on Israel against the indigenous people of Israel for a foreign occupation of Palestinians. This is the mail I got, right? And I'm not against indigenous people, indigenous Jewish people. You are one, right? Many people like I know indigenous things like that, but this is the kind of Zionist propaganda that's going on. So I just want to bring that up. One more point I want to bring up in terms of this is that even the refugee process is really complicated. They even have a point system with refugees. Did you know that? Yeah, they have a point system with this. So these Afghan refugees. That's why so many are not accepted. So what is a refugee when you treat them like immigrants?
And that's, here we are in North Surrey. I can bring up the issue of immigration, how hard it is, and what it means to give it a certain amount of points and told, oh, you're perfect, you arrive, and you're stuck. And I'm not bringing up taxi drivers at all. I'm just saying, like, you're meant to be a doctor or a math teacher or something else, and you're literally given those points to that credit. Oh yeah, your English is good enough. No, now you need to do the retesting and all of it. And I mean, extensive. It's not just 3 months, 6 months, a year. It's multiple years. The ice on your head.
The point that I want to make is that there are so many organizations. I think people who are educated in the West and the rest of the world are slowly realizing that this system, whether it's capitalism, whether it's imperialism, it's just not working. And people are waking up. So it's very inspiring. Yes, we have all these issues and problems, but on the other hand, what I see, I could be wrong, but I have faith in that more and more people are organizing and seeing the need to affiliate. And there are many, many organizations all over the world that are and are progressive and want to see these changes so that we can have a just and peaceful world. So that part is inspiring. And the next thing, of course, is that we need our youth. They are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And each one of you has a role to play in whatever it is you're doing and in attracting people. It's not just teachers, but it's communities. The reason why our democracy has been failing, and I hate to sound like like take on the ideas of communism, but in a sense, just like the way things happened in Cuba and in countries where communism worked, it's because politics was a grassroots thing. And in Canada, for whatever reason, people are not politically engaged. And part of our role, as I see it, is to engage people in their communities and to see all kinds of organizations coming together and talking and saying, okay, this is what we see is wrong. How can we relay that message? How can we lobby without having all the money to influence our politicians? And that's why I think it's wonderful that we're having this discussion today.
And certainly, and this is why in all the little descriptions of lived experience, right? I want people who lived experience that can speak to these topics, right? Because then it's not politics. First of all, everything's political. Our lives are political, right? That's the bottom line, and that's what we try to teach you. Is that if you're that privileged that you skate above it all, I don't know how many people in the world are actually in that category. You might believe you are, you might want to be, and that's maybe a natural reaction as a human to want to rise above, any difficulty. But in fact, you're not, and you're being sold like a false bill of goods, right? But that actually politics is certainly not in the top down. It has to come from below. And I would say one thing that we hear a lot is, but it's really hard, or but I might lose my job or get arrested or get hate mail, like all these different things, and we criminalize activism. Mm-hmm. And I we have the RCMP arresting people at Fairy Creek and the Tiny House Warriors. The list goes on, right? So we have this endless criminalization of BIPOC folk, of queer folk, but also just generally, I find there's still that atmosphere of, but you want to get a job. I was once told in this very building, the system pays your salary. And there's a sign right there, there's Tina Fontaine and Colton Bushi, who I recognize as people that fell, under the system, that were murdered, and their murderers got away with it. And at the rally, the Indigenous rally that I attended, hearing folks like Schoosl and other very prominent leaders reject reconciliation, or at least in the way that the government supports it to be reporting. And also the question, which I'm quoting, who's the system to actually vote? Mm-hmm. So I put that in our hallways, just as a billboard for students to think about, right? Because that's how I heard it. I want to share the knowledge. And then being told, the system pays your salary. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, but the system's not always fair. So what does that mean? The system pays my salary. Like, I think I still have the right to question the system, right? Mm-hmm. So that sense of, like, even parents, you're like, they're volunteering where, like once in a while there'll be a question, there'll be a concern. Thankfully, usually not, and they're more than happy to have their kids take part in any kind of initiative that I'm trying to do. But in the back of the minds, right? Like how is this going to hurt? And you got to stop that, because at the end of the day, most of the youth are living their own lived experience. They're taking part because they care about it. I'm not forcing anybody to do anything, like, but if you believe in it, if you have something that connects you to it, then why not be part of it?
And in our culture, we have gurus, right? Gurus that do that. And indigenous culture, elders are people, right? Yeah. So, and what do our gurus and our elders do? Environment is so on. So in our culture, indigenous culture, we revere our food. And to be told that it's designed by the system, you're teaching the truth. You're a guru.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? I got in the nice messages of, oh, you're building radicals, and I'm like, is that a bad thing? You're building anti-fascists. Is that a bad thing? Like, that's not said in being.
Radicals, they were close to the truth, right?
Yeah. So I am mindful of time. So and I just love it. We could be here forever but a lot of us have other things to do today, which are very much part of this conversation. So let me bring it to something that the reason why we kept it was that, well, we're going to tell the government what's what. We've already been doing that, but I want to get some concrete. What is something you want to see whoever the parliament is, the things that they need to do? Like, what do you need to see to say, okay, this is moving forward? They listen, and take the time you need. But I mean, like, just in the sense of this is kind of like the background has been established. Well, now, because that was kind of the point of asking the questions to begin with, was the hope that several of them might have concrete, ideas. So, maybe I'll start over here and we'll go from there. Yes.
So, in there has been a lot of celebration, a lot of patting themselves in the back from the Liberal perspective, because they apparently said that because the Parliament actually determined that our case is a genocide. So there's that, and the idea that something is a genocide actually triggers an automatic responsibility. Obviously, Canada is party to a few international legislation that actually bind them to not only hold the perpetrators accountable, but also to actually help the victims. Now, Canada has, basically put their names or decided that they're going to intervene in the case of genocide that was brought by the Gambia to hold Myanmar, the state, accountable for the genocide or the suspicion of genocide of Rohingya people at the International Court of Justice. However, it has not done the work that needs to be done in terms of intervening. They've just given a few $1 million to the law firm or to the team, the legal team that the Gambia actually brought up. There's a lot of question around how much of this is just gesture and how much of this is actually truly meaningful. However, I can't really undermine the fact that Canada has already given a lot of money to help rehabilitate or to help uplift the Rohingya community in the refugee camps in Bangladesh. Since 2017, there's already been over 800,000 people that have had to flee for their lives. Now, how much of those money actually went to the people is the question. There have been already over a few $100 million have already been spent, but very few of those money actually went down, the chain to the actual people that need help. To this day, Rohingya people are still not able to access food and water. Why is that still the case 4 years later? What is so hard about building the infrastructures with so many $100 million, not just from Canadian government, but also from other governments as well, from the European Union, from America? So many governments have pledged, but how much are they following up? And because Bangladesh is a very, poor country, of course, it's been ravaged by a lot of neocolonialism and all of these advantage that other nations have taken. Now, the government itself does not want Rohingya to remain in the refugee camps, but the money was given by the Canadian government to the Bangladeshi authority
without conditions. So how much of those money will actually go to the people? We will never know. So there has to be a better plan in place.
Accountability.
Yes. Why is it so hard for us to tell the Bangladeshi government, you can definitely use some of these money for yourself, for some of the things that you need in development of your country, but certain amounts have to go to the people in order to rehabilitate them, because currently, even though they're living genocide free, they're actually away from perpetrators. They're continuously living in poverty. They're continuously thinking, what's the next meal gonna come? Like it's only rice and lentils. Imagine eating that every single day. How would you feel? So, a lot of the camp's experience have been very, very gendered. Women are still at risk of being trafficked. Like this is something that a few $1 million could easily address. But a few $100 million for 4 years, still to this day, people are not able to access food and water. Like, what is the problem? So there has to be more accountability on that side about where our money goes, because yes, this is the reason why people are starting to discuss rhetorics like, oh, we need to take care of Canadians first, because we don't take care of the money that we give, blindly to different governments to actually use it for corruptions or use it to further their own gains. The other thing is, currently the country of Myanmar is actually undergoing a coup d'etat, and it has been for the past 5 months, since February 1st. The military, the same perpetrators that have actually committed genocide, continuously, pushing us through this very, very confined space in Rakhine State, where I'm from, and continuously, persecuting people from not just Rohingya community, but other ethnic communities as well, because we're a very diverse country. What they have done is they have overthrown the elected government and put a lot of politicians in jail, including Aung San Suu Kyi. She's now on another house arrest.
Again.
Yes, and the first thing that the military did, the Tatmadaw, the junta did, was actually hire a man named Ben Menashe, who is Israeli Canadian. He has a firm, a PR firm, a lobbying firm, out in Montreal called Dixon and Matson. And the Canadian government did not intervene, because this was the firm that actually was going to help legitimize the rule or the coup d'etat around the world with different other, nation states, to ensure that business ties is still, tight, and everything else still business as usual. And what they have done is that they have already worked for the junta for the past many months in order to basically downplay the coup and the violent overthrowing of the government and the suppression of protests and dissidents on the ground, who still continuously protesting to this day against the military junta. They have not been qualmed. The ties between these two, the firm was still working for the Tatmadaw. You know why they actually stopped? It's because the sanctions that was put by the US government. So there was a lot of freezing of assets of the military in the US. We should have done that if we were actual human rights champions. We should have been the first one. Why didn't we even get involved in this? Because there was an RCMP investigation of this man, Ben Menashe, on the South Sudan issue. The reason that there has been, there was a clause in RCMP guideline or practice that this should not even happen, like the firm relationship to the junta should not even take place. But we didn't act first. It was actually the sanction that put a stop to this, that the military could not pay Ben Menashe. So he stopped. So like you said, follow the money. But how do we actually make sure that, these companies, these firms, these different actors that are embedded within our own society, who go around in the world and actually cause more harm, not just by our own government, but other actors as well, who just smell the money and they just want to go follow any enablers, any genocide perpetrators, or any sort of
criminals activities, that they would be stopped early on, that we as a nation who is very, very concerned about human rights, about, you know, the state of the world, should not even get involved in this kind of things in the first place, that our own citizens should not enable any kind of, you know, persecution of people or marginalized communities. So I hope that the government or, you know, whoever comes into office next actually takes into consideration that they have very real effect. What they do, what they say, who they enable, who they support, or who they do not hold accountable actually have real devastating effects on the world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If I can dare say, to me, you know, I would love to see then taking your words and everything you just said and see how that applies to the Uyghurs in China. Wouldn't that be interesting, right? Yeah.
And how does it apply to people in Kashmir?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I mean, you guys said, but to my mind, I know you work a lot alongside that, and again, it was really hope someone would be here, but this is an ongoing situation as well, and so you know everything you just described is exactly what's happening in that part of the world. Right? Yeah, I'll comment on this thing.
It's so important that we have transparency with government, and yet we don't have a department that knows what's happening, who does what. A while back, there was creative art piece. It ended up that we thought, I think, women and he was something to do with this core. We didn't get that department, but it's important that there is transparency and how we can get it, but again, it's people and standing up and saying this is what's happening. So thank you for expressing. Are you guys listening?
They're not listening, right? And that is why voices and getting platforms and amplifying. There's so many great organizations out there. Nobody agenda needs my agenda needs to do that. You got to break. And then you have to break. So when we talk about this is huge. It's huge, and we say this is who we are. We follow the money. When we look at our policies, that's when we look at what's happening, we follow the world. And we can go and tell them we can support them from that place. So what the farmers, we can't tell the farmers about how they score and put down our costs, what they should be fighting for, but when they're fighting, we can help support their rights. So as a country, now what are we also doing with supporting their human rights, but also supporting those voices here that are supported, right? And what are we doing to put the pressure on to make sure human rights violations aren't happening in the biggest amounts? Right? So what is that? What's the action plan? Right? And how can we actually see that happen? Whether it's minorities within a country, whether it's communities within countries, like what are the actions? How are you going to give that, list, right? And also, another thing that's been on my mind is the international student, right? I mean, that is such a huge thing, and that there's a lot of those students are found, right? So that group has gone through a lot of discrimination, not just even on larger, even within our. But right now, especially after the pandemic, they are facing a number of issues, right? When it comes down to the administration, the actual thing, when it comes down to education, it comes down to private colleges that are not going to have support, and federal government doesn't give them support, provincial government. So yet we bring them in here and we're working on our platforms, right? And this is also an investment we're making, right? So like, I mean, this isn't just a whole human rights thing. They support our universities. And we are also refugees, right? This country is new country, right? And when we talk about immigrants, when we talk about refugees after like 5 or 6 years start actually have given back any money that our government and are then now building a iceberg or immigration or so these are investments. We're not giving them paper by opening doors with a need. Yeah. So now have your policy actually support them. So he said, love taxi drivers, love Uber drivers. But that's a doctor, a lawyer, and right? But our system, so once again, we have all these points to get here, we have all this money to get here, but once you get here, so you can't do what we know you're qualified for, you qualified for. And it's not just jumping over hurdles, right? Like, I mean, it's like, so that's important, right? And especially when you have a healthcare system that's stable. I have family that are nurses, doctors, who are like, we can't work anymore. Like, we're tired, we're broken, the system is broken. Yet, I have doctors and nurses who are either working as residents or still working in the system. But what's happening now? It's like this is a broken system which isn't serving our community. Right? So it's not just about helping immigrants or refugees or international students, it's Canadians, because this is our future. And we're breaking them already, right? And we're responsible. So I think that's an important thing that government needs to look more at policy and actually changing those policies to serve the community, right? And this policy. So I think that's another one that it's not. But there are a lot of people behind the scenes that are trying to work on fixing it, but they get.
I'm just throwing the money out there. And
Exactly.
here's $6 billion in the next,
So frustrating working in nonprofits, and then you'll get a grant or other, and it's just, oh look, we put 50 million in here. But now where's the accountability for that organization, and how are you helping them build on it? Right? Where's the shared knowledge? Right? Where's the shared programs? Where's the accessibility? Stop making us work in silos. Yeah. Right? Start encouraging us to work together and help us build on. Don't just like it's a headline. It's a headline, like even yeah.
No, silos and the gaslighting that happens when right before an election call, they start throwing out money that people literally have been fighting for years. How many letters I've written, like people that are trying to get the attention of the government, and then literally the day for the election, oh, here's, they did it in Surrey this time and last election, right? And you're sitting there, and of course you're going to take the money, right? Like how can you not? But then, yeah, that siloing is.
And that accessibility is a big thing. I mean, I know this is not a federal thing, but recently, like, they're doing the data list, right? So recently which is great. It's a needed question for the BIPOC community is key. This is what's going to help us fill through the programs, fill in gaps, and it's so missing. But it's not online. Now, the South Asian community, how many people are we going to push onto this online community? Even if it's in Punjabi, it is still accessible. Yet this time they did a good thing where they're giving funds for communities to lead their own system. But then you have to turn. I mean, what community, especially BIPOC community, especially nonprofits, have the capacity to turn something around like this, to write it down for it, and then get a force together to then execute this. So that it's a step forward, but then at the same time, it's like, guys, give us some time, give us something else. So, like you said, we're working for it, but we need a lot more meaningful.
Transparency, everybody know what's going on, everybody accountable.
And can it go around if I do have to like?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go next, actually.
No.
Yeah,
I'm just saying this is carry
okay.
on.
Sounds good. I would just say as Yasmin pointed out, the fact that we destabilize all these regimes and send these people here in some cases.
No, I know. I think I'm just saying this is carrying on.
Oh yeah, sorry, absolutely, yeah.
I'm just saying we can just
Yes,
focus on
of course,
issue around here.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
That's what I mean.
I would like to mention a couple of things in government. So my first point is that when Pompeo went to Afghanistan 1.5 years ago, the Trump government, along with Pompeo's advice, they made a special secret deal with the Taliban, and that deal was done in Qatar during the peace negotiation. And those Republicans from USA, especially Pompeo, traded after women's rights and growth rights and the minority rights for their political gain. And I'll not be surprised if these politicians and those politicians, these politicians from Canada and those politicians from USA would praise the right and freedom of Western women, people living in North America, for their political agenda. My third point is that right in the midst of violence in Afghanistan, what's happening in front of militants like Taliban as well as Al-Qaeda, there's still hope. Although they banned women from being a part of society, basically, there's hope. And Afghan women have been rising against the Taliban. They have been protests on the street in Kabul, as well as in rural areas. They stood up against the Taliban. They confronted the Taliban right there in their face. There's so many pictures of them on social media, the Taliban fighting them and responding, and these women are standing right. We are not here done. We are not going home without our rights. That's the campaign. Yeah. So I would request from everyone here in Canada to support those women, support those groups, because they are the hope and they are the people that will change even the Taliban and the mindset and the authoritarian regime of the Taliban from the core, from within. And that's the only way that we can change the regime. Support them in any way we can. And my third point is that because of the rise of the refugees in Canada, a lot of these refugees are young people, they're young women. So I encourage all these schools, universities, UBC, SFU. I would encourage student senate to have lobby and support group for the Afghan refugee students. On a daily basis, I am receiving so many requests. Thank you. So many requests from the girls from with newly arrived refugees as well as refugees in Afghanistan who are becoming refugees. They're stateless, they're homeless, they're not part of this America, Afghanistan. So we need that for specific programs for these women because the population of young educated people in Afghanistan is actually greater than the Taliban. So if we support the youth and the educated population, we will win over the Taliban. So I welcome, thank you. So I welcome that opportunity that universities and schools take the initiative and take more refugee students locally and also.
Our foreign aid in Canada has changed over the last couple of decades from one of need or or the UN sort of requesting international help aid to one of cleaning up Western military excursions, including our own, and that's been a failure, and it's resulted in us losing our seat when we applied at the UN Security Council. Two smaller nations that have been doing the work that we should. The other point is Canada has played a role in overturning elected governments around the world, including indeed overthrowing elected government to turn the clock backwards to support the Dalier regime. And the same thing in Bolivia, overthrow a popular native government, the first time in history in Bolivia, for the military overthrown in another election. Did we learn anything from that? Sure. The people who were leading that effort should be shown the door. Right? In Venezuela, same thing. People that have say no to foreign corporate interests shouldn't be threatened with the jury walk me.
So here is a fun part for you. I tagged Carla Culture my on Twitter. It goes like and Carla Culture, I promise that you have my support. This is despite the fact that you never stood up for #DN Saiba, a jailed Indian scholar citing neutrality of Canada, even though you claim to be an advocate for disability rights. What if we choose to remain neutral? What will happen? This is a message I sent, but she never responded. It's fine. But I'm really concerned that if conservatives come to power, our job will become even because conservatives have a very good alliance and relationship with the. So we are going to face a Herculean task if they come to power. Now, I'm not suggesting that you vote according to my wishes, but what I'm saying is that in this situation, when we have a progressive government, they couldn't stand up for us. So what can we expect if there is a conservative government coming in? So we need to make all these people accountable. They cannot take our support for granted. The problem is with the farmers' protest. A lot of politicians came on board, and you know why? Because people forced them to come on board. People were marching out in the streets. This was not the case with CAA and other issues, or even Kashmir issue. But here, everybody was on board. And also with Kashmir comes the red flag of Islamophobia. That's also a huge problem. So we need to make them accountable. Don't be pleased by the fact that Aaron O'Toole made a statement for the farmers. Justin Trudeau made a statement for farmers. Then what? Afterwards, he went to Modi with a begging bowl for asking for vaccines. So that gave him more legitimacy. So this is completely ridiculous. And farmer issue is a neutral territory. Even Modi can say no farmer to what's the big deal about it, you know? Anyone can say that. So those are some complexities we need to pay attention.
Well, I have to listen, but I do want to first of all thank you for I have a specific proposal to carry this work through. We have here the global peace alliance. So we can use this vehicle of getting us, yes, we need us, whether it's Rohingya, Afghanistan, farmers, whatever, to carry on this work similar to Amnesty. Right? Carry on to put the pressure on this work, gets elected. Through social media, through a virtual platform, to do campaigns, whether it's the issues, whether it's the leaders of Uzbekistan and so on. And what I'm proposing is the next thing we do is have a online forum inviting all these panelists on working on rights. It's a time coming up, and give us time to organize as a platform to have more of an audience and to specifically challenge you as well. So that's my proposal. And I know that Kabir is trying to organize around that. So let's partner with Kabir and let's do it together. So yeah,
It's entirely doable. We had a session in our first school, like we went through C21, where we turned out we had students as well, right? So it was like several hundred people in one place. So if you need let's use our facilities, let's use our taxpayer dollars to support this. It is so easy to do it with school because we're talking about youth empowerment. We get them involved, they go back and they talk about these things. So you're on December 10th, I'll put it in the books and let's. Yes.
So let's do it broader. I know it's like worked with Kabir last time, but he went on its own. So let's do it bigger and better and if we do an alliance thing with giving highlighting the individual organizations as part of the alliance, and then giving them this platform to work together on agendas and specific agendas. So that's fine.
I'm in December 10th. Let's do it.
Because I have a meeting with Kabir next week anyway, so I'll give a talk to him. Or
Yeah. And you haven't asked if anybody really. That's a challenge for us. We've challenged voters. We've challenged the government. What's a challenge that you want to put out there, or a demand, I guess?
I don't know if I have a demand or a challenge or anything. anything like that. Again, even though yes, I recognize I am a woman of color, and you know, I always speak about my experiences of my mom. She's a single mother. She's experienced racism, discrimination. I recognize I have a lot of privilege being a settler here. So, you know, where are we honestly? But I think after these discussions, everyone's experience, they demand. It kind of ties back to what you were saying Andy, about how you know, we have the students here in the school, right? And we put out the posters of the billboards, right? Asking who does the system really belong to, right? And I know me growing up, and obviously I've grown up colonial, and every day I'm trying to decolonize my thinking more and more and more. I remember growing up always thinking, and my mom also thinking, she's an immigrant here. I need to give my daughter the best life for her to be in the system and rise up in the system. But now coming into my adulthood and realizing that being in the system and trying to be a part of it, it's actually wrong. It's actually disgusting that we're even teaching our kids like I get it, the Canadian dream, for instance, being in the West, right? You're having greater privileges being here, but guess what? All these different communities, IBPOC communities, trying to work up and move forward to be in this system to have a better life and continue giving more privileges to our families that are settled here. Who's still winning at the end of the day? It's still white supremacy. We're all fighting to have our place in the system when really we should just be not following the system. So I think that's just the thought that's been coming into my head, just hearing everyone. It's that it's time that we stop following, we start changing, and that's all I really wanted to say. Like, thank you for letting me be here and just letting me have the opportunity to hear you all. And thank you for teaching me something that hopefully or take it to Senate as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've seen that pattern because my family are immigrants as well, and we see every party do it, you know, especially if they've been elected, right? They'll take out their list of what I've done for you, right? What we've done for you, and some of it goes way back, right? The Multicultural Act. That at this point it doesn't even work, right? All those things, but you see that, right? You see that idea of that. Look what we've done for you. We're being taken for granted, and completely away. We do that here in Canada. The rights for Indigenous peoples for supposed wealth. We put oil over people's rights, right? Every single day. Over clean water. Over clean water. We sit here, 51 communities with no clean water. And we even know that as people with privilege, it could be a little privilege, but it's still privilege, that if the water main breaks outside the school, they're gonna fix it right away. Right? And we're all gonna be happy about that. We're gonna demand that. But do any of us really fight those 51 communities? I mean, it was 100 a couple of years ago, right? Like, not quite, right? Not to the same fervor. And so we know we benefit from it. And I would just say this, it literally happened yesterday. I am sick and tired of people saying that somehow immigrants, refugees, whatever, you choose the label, you know, they don't give back or we're giving them. I had a Syrian refugee student, a teacher calls me, we have a new student, he doesn't speak English, he's really kind of like, he's really confused, right? Do you have an Arabic speaker? And I had several, but, and one person said, I'll go. So she missed the entire class. I'm not putting my content over anything, I'm just saying, she missed her entire class so that she could translate. She is right now giving back. She's right now filling the holes in her system, right? Because where do that job? We should be, I mean, we do have some, but not a lot. and they are overwhelmed with requests. So we have our students daily being pulled out of class because they have the incredible knowledge of that extra language. They know Arabic, whatever language it might be, right? So it sickens me. And yeah, international students as well, all kinds of folks that they give back before they even arrive to this country, because they're willing to come to this country. They're willing to be mistreated because somehow they think life will be better. And we hope it's better. You know, in a perfect world, it would, you know, it is better. But, and it happened to my family, all kinds of things, right? But it's really, and it's the same thing with activists, this idea that somehow you're not important enough. No, we're not a major media outlet. No, there's no big organization tied to this. Why is it that we're doing all the work? Right? So that's my closing thoughts.
The perfect place to mention media. And I want to urge everyone to become active in the time that we have left for these elections to push for the peace point that I'm going to mention. And if you don't mind, I will go through them because I think it's important. And Cmtes, I know you need to go, but feel free because it's taking us a couple minutes to go through them. The reason I'm doing this is because Global Peace Alliance is working with a big umbrella now across Canada. It's an organization called Canada-wide Peace and Justice Network. There are over 30 organizations, and each organization continues the work, but at least we have a place where all the ideas come together. And when we do meet next time, it's important that even through this video, we can take things from what we've talked about today and send them back to the organization. So in starting Monday, I'm giving you this information, which is not official yet, but I think it's important because as of Monday, it will hopefully be all over Twitter. There'll be all kinds of ways to communicate these asks from the candidates and from future government. So here they go. Number one, defund Canada's ballooning military budget and weapons spending spree. So cancel Canada's planned purchase of 88 new fighter jets. Scrap plans to purchase Canada's first unmanned armed drones. Reverse the 73% increase in military spending promised in Canada's 2017 defense policy. Number two, end Canada's role as a major arms dealer, support global disarmament. And the points under this one, stop arming Saudi Arabia and fueling the war in Yemen. And there are hashtags for each point. And if you go to become our follow us on Twitter over the next 2 weeks, I will be retweeting all those, and you can do so as well. And that way we'll get it out. Suspend all arms sales to Israel until illegal occupations and violence against Palestinians end. Join 97 countries around the world in signing the United Nations Nuclear Ban Treaty. And I know you're gonna clap at every which one of them, so you can clap at the end because they're all fantastic. They're all what we know and want, and I'm hoping that people listen to this session that we're having today. Update Canadian arms exports regulations and bring Canada into compliance with the Arms Trade Treaty. Cancel the drone contract with Israeli weapons company LB Systems. Third point, no more domestic military ops and militarized colonization. And here are the points for that. Immediately cease all programs providing military-grade equipment and training to police. Expedite the cleanup of all former Canadian military bases. Concretize plans to return land to Indigenous communities. End all domestic military surveillance, put a moratorium on all military propaganda initiatives until an independent and impartial investigation is carried out into their legality, fully implement the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the calls to justice, and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry report, and ensure that the laws of Canada are consistent with the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Last one, reverse Canada's antagonistic and US-led foreign policy. Here are the points. Full and permanent immigration status for all migrants and refugees in Canada. End the aggressive new Cold War posturing with China and Russia. Release Hawaii Executive Meng Wanzhou, detained under an illegal extradition request from President Trump. Withdraw troops immediately from Ukraine, Latvia, and Iraq. End generalized economic sanctions in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Iran, Yemen, Syria, Palestine, and North Korea. Begin a formal inquiry into the possibility of withdrawing from NATO and NORAD. Again, these are the points of a group of peace organizations over 30, and they fall under the umbrella Canada-wide Peace and Justice Network, of which Global Peace Alliance is a part of.
And with that being said, yeah, and this was never about an election, so you know that we'll be back very soon, and hopefully before December 10th, we'll see what we can plan, but this is ongoing. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you.